We are here every 2 weeks, and I am joined by Allan from Voices for Scotland. Hi, Allan.
Hi, Michael. How are you doing today?
Not bad. How's things?
Yeah, good man. All very, very good.
Busy, busy.
Yeah, just another busy week at Voices. Just doing our thing, getting stuff organised. We've got a few things coming up. We've got Jerry Hassan in conversation event on Thursday, so that'll probably be tonight if you're listening to the podcast on Thursday. And we've got Sir Jeff Palmer in conversation the week after, and then we've got a few other things coming up in November and December, which we haven't announced yet, but we will very soon. So lots of really good stuff coming up on the horizon as well.
Yeah, that was good. Yeah. Before we start, if you want to get in touch with Voices for Scotland, you can do so by tweeting us, Voices for Scotland, or the website. You can check us out at voicesforscotland.scot. So there you go. So a couple of things made the headlines the last couple of weeks. So I'll hand over to you for the first one.
Yes, the first thing, I mean, obviously, I think a lot of people were talking about it, was another poll showing increased support for independence. So this latest poll, which I think was done for STV, showed support at 58%, and I think that's the ninth poll in a row which is showing support for independence. So yeah, I mean, it's really, really positive, and things are obviously heading in the right direction. And yeah, it's great, and yeah, it just follows a trend of the support growing for independence. So I think it shows that more people are coming around to the idea and recognising that Scotland can and should be an independent country. But I think as well, I think the really important thing, which I always think when I see these polls, is that it's we can't take anything for granted, and even with a poll at 58%, or if it goes up to 60, 62, 64, we've got to keep working and we've got to keep campaigning, because the thing that I'm very conscious about is about learning the lesson from what happened after the Brexit referendum. It really caused such division because the result of that was so particularly close, but it just really entrenched people in different viewpoints, and that can't happen with independence. So we need to keep growing the support, but we need to make everybody feel part of the conversation and part of the campaign. But overall, I think it's a really, really positive thing. What do you think, Michael?
Yeah. I mean, obviously, well, to be honest, we haven't stopped since 2014. I think, there's plenty of yes groups out there. Can I keep going? And you've got to keep that kind of like momentum up there and get the word out there and stuff, and speak to mainstream groups, but also speak to kind of like diverse groups as well. That could be kind of like disability, mental health, LGBT, race, religion groups, anywhere and everywhere that we can get into. I think that would be good to spread the message or the good news about why it's positive to be an independent country.
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. I mean, I think I've said this before a number of times, that my own personal view and the way that I look at independence is an opportunity. It's an opportunity to create a fairer and more equal society. But that only works if everybody is involved in the conversation and discussion about what an independent Scotland actually looks like and what it looks like for them. Whatever background they come from, however they sort of identify themselves as, whether that's a religious group or whatever it might be. It's so important that everybody's involved in that discussion in deciding what an independent country does look like for them. So yeah, you're absolutely right. And you're right. And for a lot of people, the campaigning never stopped, and there's lots of yes groups all across Scotland and England and other parts who have been campaigning all this time. But yeah, again, just touching on something that you said there, it's really important that we speak to other people that aren't members of those groups. Because there's a huge number of people who are undecided and undecided about how they would vote when the referendum does come along. And we need to be speaking to those people, and we need to be making it relevant to them, and understanding the opportunity that arises from independence and how we could make things a lot better for everyone, really. And I think that's a huge part of what we're doing at Voices for Scotland, really, is we're trying to have these conversations with people. And to be honest, a lot of the conversations that we're having are with people who already support independence. But hopefully, what we are doing is we're helping to maybe change the conversations that people have. We're helping to think about things in a different way, so that we can speak to different types of people and make people feel part of it, part of the conversation and part of the process of actually coming up with ideas about what an independent Scotland might look like. So,
and also, I think we need to get out there as well that when I was kind of like canvassing, and possibly you were back in 2014, a lot of people, kept coming up to us and say, yeah, I'm not going to vote yes because of Nicola Sturgeon and the SNP, and we need to get that message across that the yes vote is not all about the SNP. The yes vote is about picking your own. If we get yes, it's about picking your own government for Scotland. So the yes vote isn't about all about the SNP. There's different groups, Labour, the Green Party, and stuff like that. So, and then when we get that independent Scotland, we can choose our own government.
yeah, absolutely. I mean, that's what happened a lot of times in 2014. It wasn't Nicola Sturgeon's name that was mentioned; it was Alex Salmond's name. People come up and say, "I don't like Alex Salmond. I wouldn't vote for independence." And it's such it doesn't make a lot of sense to me, but it's an easy thing for people to pick up on, and a good thing for the opposition, for unionists to use. And I think we'll come to that on our next topic in a minute. But I think, again, this is sort of stepping on what we'll be speaking about shortly. But I think if people voted for independence, then you're right that you're voting so you can choose your own government, and I think it's maybe unlikely that there even will be an SNP in independent Scotland, because remember the SNP is sort of made up of people with sort of disparate political views, or they sit in different parts of the political spectrum, but they're united by the want, or the need for independence. So I don't know what the future holds for the SNP in an independent Scotland, but it gives opportunity for other parties to come back. Maybe that is Labour, maybe it's the Green Party, maybe there'll be new parties that come out of that as well. So that argument about not voting for independence because of an individual politician doesn't really make sense, because that's not what independence is about. I think the other thing about that as well, though, is that, and again, this is maybe partly why the polls have been so much in favour of independence, is the coronavirus crisis has really highlighted the need for independence and for autonomy, particularly when it comes to finances. You look at what's happening in the regional parts of England right now, and what's happening in Scotland is that different areas are being put into different restrictions. Something in some areas quite close to a full lockdown. That only works if there's a financial backing to support those businesses and individuals who are affected by that. And it's for Scotland, where the most populous parts of the country are under quite heavy restrictions right now. The money needs to be there to be able to support businesses and individuals, so that when we come out of that, they still exist. Because there's a real danger that won't happen. But we don't have the money, we don't have the borrowing powers to be able to create that money so that it's there to support people. I think that's a big part of it. Is that it's a vote for independence, or just even your support for independence right now is a step towards having that autonomy and having the ability to actually support people that need it in these difficult times. So I think yeah, there's certainly a lot going on, but it's going back to the poll, really positive, really great. But I think we can't take anything for granted. We need to keep campaigning. We need to keep having the conversations and getting other people involved so we can keep growing support, because the more support that we have for independence and the more that's shown in the polls, then the more likely it is that we'll have that referendum and be able to go to the polling station and actually vote for independence. So, still work to be done.
I think in football, I think in football terms, Allan, what this says, don't take your eye off the ball.
Yeah, absolutely, yeah, definitely. There's still a lot of work to be done, and we can't take anything for granted.
No, exactly. Okay, let's move on to our next topic then, Allan, that we're going to be speaking about.
Yeah, so it was in the news yesterday. There was a leaked document seen by Bloomberg News about a report that was produced, a sort of strategy report that was produced about how the Tories can stop independence from happening. So it was produced by an agency called Hanbury, which was set up by David Cameron's director of strategy, and a pro-Brexit group, pro-Brexit team. And so it was setting out the strategy for how the Tories can sort of campaign or stop independence from happening, and their sort of key ideas from that were, going back to what we'd mentioned earlier on, was to attack the SNP or Nicola Sturgeon in particular. So attacking the SNP's record in government and attacking Nicola Sturgeon as an individual, which you can imagine when it comes to a time when more people are campaigning, will result in people saying, I'm not voting for independence because I don't like Nicola Sturgeon. So it'll be the same thing that we had again. The second sort of key thing that I picked out of that was about the Tories or the UK government speaking to the EU and getting the EU to come out and say that Scotland couldn't join the EU as an independent country, which I think is pretty ridiculous, given that the Conservatives or the UK government have had absolutely disastrous negotiations with the EU, disastrous negotiations with Manchester over the last few days. I don't know how they can expect to go and negotiate with the EU and get them to come out and campaign on the constitutional matters within a country which is not part of the EU. So that's a really interesting one and a bit bizarre, actually, if you ask me. And then the third part of that as well was to offer more power. So, up until now, there's been a sort of flat no from Boris Johnson and Michael Gove when it comes to the question of a referendum. It's been no chance, not happening. This once in a generation thing to keep rolling out, which, by the way, is also mentioned in the report, is having little impact now. So I think you'll find that they'll stop saying that from now on. But yeah, it's the offer of more powers to Scotland and more devolving more powers to Scotland. When I think of that, I think back to that front page of the Daily Record in 2014, that vow, and just, it wasn't worth the 25p or 30p, however much the Daily Record was then, I can't remember. It wasn't worth that then, and it's worth even less now, particularly when you look at what's happened with the Internal Market Bill. It's just all of a bit of a joke. But it's a really interesting insight into the possible strategies. I mean, to be honest, I think anybody who's sort of been involved or pays a close attention to politics, there's probably not a lot of surprises in there. But it's just, I think it's interesting that this report has been commissioned and it's been produced now. What that tells me is that they see independence as a growing possibility or perhaps even a reality, and they're taking it a lot more serious now that they're commissioning this thing. In typical form for this government, they like to outsource everything, and that includes their own thinking as well. So yeah, really interesting document. What do you make of those sort of key points?
I just think that when I saw this report that you showed me before we'd done this, and I could quickly, I'm not very surprised because I'm very smicky, and that's a good Scottish word, smicky, about it. But it's when everybody is concentrating on the coronavirus and all that, and everybody's because there's a world pandemic. But you need to watch this government, because you never know what a bit going on behind the scenes, and obviously this is kind of happening now. I've not heard anything in like the our kind of media in Scotland covering this as yet. Maybe it will. Maybe I'm totally wrong, and it's come out and I've just not seen it. But yeah, they're a bit kind of like sneaky about going behind people's backs and speaking to the EU and all that. And have they spoke to the EU, or maybe they're just saying that, or whatever?
No, I don't think. I think this is just a report produced by an external company. Like sort of. I don't know if they're a think tank or a lobbying group or whatever they might be. It's
if you're saying that they're connected to David Cameron, gives it no like smell of kind of being a bit biased?
Well, it's probably a report produced for the Tory Party, so it's a strategy document, a strategy paper, and there's a bit of a. It's fairly common for people who have worked in government to go off and then start working for think tanks or for big companies. You look at, for example, George Osborne, for example, was the editor of the Evening Standard, but also gets paid a lot of money by this finance company. Was it called BlackRock or something like that?
Yeah.
So, and it's the same. There's a quick look into it, and you find out that a lot of politicians, particularly in Westminster, I'm not so sure about Holyrood actually, but a lot of politicians earn quite a lot of extra money from little bits of consultancy work here and there, and we're talking tens of thousands of pounds for very little work for different companies. And I think we mentioned this in the other podcast as well. There's quite a big scandal which is known about. I think it will grow and grow about PPE and expenditure by the Westminster government on PPE, and that millions of pounds going to various companies that have links to the Tory Party. So, for example, just to put things in context, Boris Johnson's taken the decision to put Manchester into this lockdown, which I don't know if you've seen the video, but Andy Burnham only saw that whilst he was doing a live broadcast. Somebody showed him an email or a tweet, whatever it was, on the phone, so he had to sort of respond to that live in TV, which has not gone down well for the government. But just to put things into a bit of context, the UK government's making £22 million available to Manchester during this lockdown. Over the course of this pandemic, they paid £43.8 million to a dormant company for PPE, and in total they've paid about 180 million for PPE to companies that have links to the Tory Party. So this is all happening without the normal tendering process happening as well. So we've sort of gone down a wee bit of a rabbit hole here, but it does sort of put things into context a little bit. But it's just, to go back to what we're talking about, it is fairly normal for people that have had close links with government to go out and then work with these different companies and produce reports and stuff like that. It's just, I guess, what happens, rightly or wrongly. But yeah, I think it is a strategy paper. I don't. There's not a huge amount that's particularly surprising in it, but it's good. I think it's useful for people to know about, because we know what to expect. We know what's coming, and when the campaign does sort of ratchet up a little bit, which you'll expect will happen. I mean, next year after the Holyrood elections, if everything sort of goes as expected, then you'll end up with a majority of SNP MSPs in Holyrood, and that is the mandate that they've been looking for, so that we can have another independence referendum. If the polls are still roughly where they are, or maybe they're even higher, then there is pressure on Westminster to actually allow that to happen, to stop just having that flat no. So it's important that we know these sort of the strategy that's going to happen, and that we're that we're doing our job. We're campaigning, we're speaking to people, we're having conversations, and we're engaging people in the reasons for independence and why it's an important thing. So yeah, it's interesting though. Interesting insight into the strategy.
Yeah, and I don't think the campaigning's ever went away. Maybe it took a bit of a lull after the 2014, was everybody was a bit disappointed, but a couple of weeks later we were all back on our horses, and we were ready to fight again.
Yeah. Well, do you know what? I'll be honest with you. That wasn't really the case for me. It took me quite a while actually after 2014. I mean, there was various reasons for it actually, but it took me a wee while to sort of get back into it, because it was such a massive disappointment. It was when you put so much into it, so much time, so much effort, and you really believe. And I think that was a big part of the problem, is that I sort of underestimated the echo chamber effect, particularly in social media and around the people that I hang around with. I mean, I didn't know. I think I only knew one person that was going to vote against independence back in 2014. So I just, I knew it was going to be close, but I really believed that we were going to do it. So yeah, it took me quite a long time to get back into it. It was a lot to overcome. But I think the important thing as well is that so much has moved on since then, and it's really important that we learn our lessons from 2014, but recognise it's a very, very different landscape. It's a very, very different campaign.
I think we know more things now about Brexit and everything else that we didn't know in 2014 as well. So I think that kind of helps us.
Yeah, definitely, and I think fundamentally there's so much more at stake now. We talk sometimes about a sort of divergent path that Scotland could be on compared to the direction that this Tory government of the last 10, 11 years or 10 years has taken us on. But it almost seems like they're sort of polar opposites. These paths are just going in completely different directions. So I think that there's just a lot at stake now, in terms of having a more equal and fairer society. So yeah, there's just, I think that's really one of the key things for me, and which is why personally I feel so motivated and just eager to campaign as much as I can and do everything that I can do to make sure that we win this time, because I just, for so many people, they have been so deeply affected by the Tory policies over the last 10 years. And the indication from the Chancellor the other week was that we could see a return to austerity as the coronavirus coronavirus crisis. Not an easy thing to say. Is that, hopefully, if we're looking at a vaccine at the start of next year, as the actual health side of it dissipates, then it will be the focus on the economic side of it, and there is the indication that we could be heading back towards austerity, and that's going to be utterly devastating for a lot of people. We can't have that. Just can't happen. It can't happen.
And I mean, don't forget this is the same chancellor that came out 2 or 3 weeks ago to say to all the people working in the kind of entertainment art sector about you should get a second job. So, and that's not very fair. But in saying that, that he, it's a case of I'm all right, Jack. So he will be okay for years to come, but everybody else is like got to suffer as well,
Yeah, I mean, I think his father-in-law was a billionaire hedge fund manager. I think there's a big distinction between how things. London has always seemed like a bit of a bubble. And things are very different, and it just seems like comments like that are very out of touch with the majority of the population, and that's a big problem, because it sort of displays a lack of understanding about reality for the majority of people in this country, and a lot of people are going through a really difficult time, and it's times like these where people need support the most. They need help. They need opportunity as well, and that's not presenting itself. So we need to, as a country, Scotland, need to create that opportunity and provide that help for people that need it the most. So it's all there in front of us.
Yeah, so if you want to get involved, I know you told us at the top, but if you want to get involved in any of the events Voices for Scotland are running, and they're putting on different events every single week, just look us up on the website, voicesforscotland.scot, or else you can head on to Twitter if that's your thing, and just look for @Voices for Scotland. That's Voices for Scotland on Twitter. And don't forget, if you want to find out more about the podcast, or else maybe you want us to speak about anything else that we're not speaking about, then you can just email us or tweet us on as well. We're always happy to hear from you. So so hopefully that you enjoyed this episode, and we'll be back in a few weeks' time.
Nice one. Thanks. Bye.